Mates, this is the last video in our virtual SG series for Tour Guide Wannabes. With this video, we complete preparations for those taking the Tourist Guide assessment. I hope that the set of videos produced will help make up for the shortcomings of the assessment system affected by the pandemic. For viewers who are not undergoing assessment, I hope that you have enjoyed virtually traveling in Singapore as much as I do. I also thank you for accepting the initial quality of videos produced, which will continue to improve as my routine becomes established. If you have suggestions for improvement, please leave a comment below. Now for the video proper, the theme covers Neighbourhood Trails of Singapore, informing on the different neighbourhoods of Singapore through stops at Albert Mall, Blair Road, and Toa Payoh. Albert Mall depicts a neighbourhood in an urban city setting, with established institutions such as Kwan Thong Temple and Sri Krishnan Temple as anchors. The bustle of the city then gives way to the quiet setting of Blair Road, a conserved residential area of houses from a bygone era. Finally, experience a more familiar setting to most Singaporeans at Toa Payoh Town Centre, one of the many centrally planned satellite towns built from scratch for the housing needs of ordinary Singaporeans. Our route begins in the already familiar setting of Tanglin and Orchard, a neighbourhood which has been described multiple times in previous videos as an upscale and sought-after place to live in for the wealthiest of households. Nestled amongst the million-dollar apartments are embassies and consulates of the many countries Singapore has diplomatic ties with. These houses find themselves behind the busy hotels and shopping complexes that front the main thoroughfare of the district of Orchard Road. On this road, Amazon, eBay, and Alibaba come to life in a 3D world of boutiques and showrooms, offering an emporium of goods that one can physically handle in all his senses before deciding to buy. The 2-kilometer street is the perfect place for getting into the Christmas spirit. In the run-up to the season of gifting and giving, the evergreen tropical trees are decorated and themed accordingly for the occasion. Closer to town, at the lower end of Orchard Road, a large swath of 106-acre land has remained mostly unchanged for over 150 years. Originally the seat of the governor in 1869, this compound, now better known as the Istana, is the presidential office of Singapore. Entry is restricted to only the most special occasions of the year. Although the changing of the guards ceremony occurs outside the main gates at 6 p.m. on the first Sunday of each month. The neighbourhood of Bras Basah and its anchor as the Centre for Heritage, Arts and Education has also been discussed before. Our journey on Bras Basah Road will however end prematurely with a left turn onto Queen Street. The street takes its name from Queen Victoria, the great-great-great-grandmother of King Charles III. Once a Eurasian and European enclave, the street is known for many churches, two of which, the Cathedral of Good Shepherd and Church of St. Peter's and Paul's, continue to thrive amidst the transformation of the district. The busier part of this street is further down after Middle Road and before the Singapore-Johor bus terminal. Albert Centre, with its market and cooked food stalls, marked the start of the pedestrianised Albert Mall, whose name stems from Queen Victoria's beloved husband, Prince Albert. A rather Buddhist, Taoist and Chinese atmosphere governs the pathways, as shops selling precious stones and religious amulets mingle with vegetarian quick-service restaurants and fortune-tellers that claim to predict your future based on whichever body part that you would like to be read. The prevalence of these is due to the Guanyin Dong Hucho Temple and its many visitors. This temple holds significant national importance to Buddhists as the must-visit temple during Chinese New Year. As one of the oldest Buddhist temples in Singapore with origins in 1884, it is dedicated to Guan Yin, the goddess of mercy. The temple is busiest on the eve of Chinese New Year, when devotees jostle to put their joss stick offering, which carries with them their prayers, in the urn at the stroke of midnight. It is believed the first person to plant their sticks into the urn will have an auspicious new year. Otherwise, the temple sees visitations spike on the 1st and 15th day of the lunar month, when devotees by tradition make special prayers to Buddha. A traditional offering, in addition to incense, can include flowers such as lotus and fruit such as oranges. Money is also accepted. The lotus flower is symbolic in Buddhism. In its natural environment, it rises and blooms above the muddied water, just like a person working towards enlightenment in a murky life. Guan Yin herself was a bodhisattva, most renowned for her compassion. A bodhisattva is a follower of Buddhism who has been confirmed by a living Buddha to be on the path towards Buddhahood. Her day of attainment is celebrated on the 19th day of the 6th lunar month. She is also more commonly known as the Goddess of Mercy, who with her powers of compassion assists all who pray to her in living through the sufferings of life. She occupies the center of the altar before the elevated statue of Sakyamuni Buddha or Gautama Buddha, the enlightened founder of Buddhism. She is flanked on the side by the simply dressed Bodhidharma, founder of Zen Buddhism in China, and on the other side by the learned-looking Hua Tuo, Chinese saint of medicine. Legend credits Bodhidharma with the creation of Shaolin Kung Fu in the Shaolin Monastery. A further legend says that he holed himself up in a cave near the monastery for 9 years of wall gazing. The world's first tea plants were created from eyelids when he cut them off for sleeping 7 years into the gazing. His other name is Da Mo, which is Dharma written in the sound of Chinese. Hua Tuo is a classical expert on medicine in China. He is known for his abilities in acupuncture, herbal medicine, Dao Yin, exercise, and moxibustion, the predecessor of cupping. Hua Tuo is credited with creating the world's first anesthetic, the numbing bumbling powder, or Ma Fei San, which he used successfully on patients during surgery. The saints that devotees pay homage to in this temple provide clues to the priorities of early Chinese immigrants: comfort against hardship, enlightenment against goals and expectations, and vitality against afflictions of health. The temple design is quite unique when compared to traditional Chinese temples because it was extensively rebuilt in 1982 to to accommodate the sheer volume of devotees. Whereas deities are housed in their individual altars at different parts of the temple, in this temple they sit on a single altar. The savings in space is then given over to the large hall on which devotees may engage in the divination activity of Kao Qin or Qiu Qian. The act of Kao Qin comprises a bucket containing 100 numbered sticks of different outcomes, written in rather cryptic lottery poetry. Devotees seek an answer to their question by shaking the bucket in a kneeling position until a single stick emerges. The answer is confirmed with the use of a pair of moon blocks known as Jiao Bei, which represents the deity's lips. Meanwhile, the Sri Krishnan temple nearby dates back even earlier, to 1870, beginning as a small shrine under a banyan tree. This temple is unique in being the only South Indian temple in Singapore dedicated to Krishnan and Rukmini. As the 8th avatar of Vishnu, Krishna sits under the Hindu trinity of preservation. The blue-skinned god has a reputation for being attractive and playful, winning over the hearts of many ladies. A gopuram announces the purpose of the temple to passers-by. The key scene on this tower is a wedding between Srinivasa, an avatar of Vishnu, and Padmavati, an avatar of Lakshmi. Incarnations of Vishnu and his vehicle Garuda make up the rest of the tower. Together with the Kwan Im Dong Hucho temple, this temple presents the most visible practice of cross-worship in Singapore, where devotees of one temple also worship the other. This is facilitated by the urn for joss sticks at the entrance and a statue of Kwan Yin within the temple itself. In this section of the coach route, we take a journey not much different from the one discussed before. Joining North Bridge Road shortly from Middle Road, we pass the backside of Raffles Hotel and its famous Singapore Sling into the civic district housing the nation's top court and parliament. The neighbourhoods and much of the country scene are a careful work in planning by government administrators, beginning first with Sir Stamford Raffles and later Lee Kuan Yew. The legacy of Sir Stamford Raffles' plan is a Chinatown district despite a majority Chinese population in an island of 5.6 million. hallmarks of religious and racial harmony are repeated along South Bridge Road in the form of Masjid Chulia, Sri Mariamman Temple, and Buddha Tooth Relic Temple. All coexisting along one side of the street. The ethnic integration policy introduced to social housing estates that 80% of Singaporeans live in ensures that the same occurs to people of different ethnicities. The policy sets limiting quotas for the proportion of ethnic groups allowed in a precinct, effectively preventing the establishment of ethnic enclaves outside those defined by colonial legacy. Examples of social housing blocks in which this policy applies include those in Kreta Ayer, and the more recent Pinnacle at Duxton. However, it does not apply to private properties. The Peranakan houses at Spottiswoode Park and Blair Road were covered in the last video. This neighbourhood, once in the outskirts of town, was gazetted for conservation in 1991. Most of the houses in the area began as housing for dock workers when the port operations expanded out of the Singapore River into the new harbour beginning in the 1860s. Completion of the Tanjung Pagar railway station in 1930 and its integration to the docks raised the profile and wealth of this neighbourhood and its inhabitants further. What resulted was a fusion of architectural styles implemented by wealthy homeowners in a race to be better than the rest. Similar to the practice of cross-worship seen earlier, inhabitants of this neighbourhood crossed the best architectural designs on earth, giving rise to French windows under Malay roof eaves and Chinese bat-shaped vents. Conservation guidelines require the facade to be preserved as it is, but are more flexible where the internal arrangement of the building is concerned. Therefore, it is not surprising to find that many of the conserved shop houses are but a shell of their former selves, having lost their soul and character within. This is a compromise that was made between preservation and sustainability in a land-scarce country of 700 square kilometers. The soil of the greater part of this precinct that does not fall under the conservation plan is expected to undergo tremendous change in the next decade as the waterport facilities move out to Tuas Megaport in the west. And the refurbishment of Tanjung Pagar railway station into a metro station on the Circle Line is completed. Krishnan, the greater southern waterfront, new residential and mixed developments will spill out of the current central business district toward the coast. Our final route is a journey towards Toa Payoh New Town, the first satellite town built and conceived by the current social housing agency, Housing and Development Board. Located some 8 kilometers from the city centre in the central part of the island, the first flats were completed in 1966, a year after Singapore's separation from the Federation of Malaysia. The new nation at the time faced an acute shortage of housing, its 1.7 million residents. 250,000 lived in crumbling shop houses, while another 400,000 squatted on the city fringes. The agency had a monumental task cut out for it. The town was planned for a population of 300,000, a sixth of the people living on the island then. To achieve this in a relatively far-out location, the town was envisaged to be self-contained with amenities, industries, markets, schools, and shops serving 50,000 homes. The model was repeated across the island over the years into 24 new towns as of today. The success of these towns, some of which locate at the far end of the island, a long way from the city, may also be attributed to the implementation of a reliable transport infrastructure of excellent connectivity. The Central Expressway is one road built to provide speedy access across the island. This expressway is unique in being the most complex project in its time. Comprising 2 tunnels crossing under an urban setting, the Singapore River, and a set of metro tunnels, the expressway was fully opened in 1991, linking the new towns of Yishun, Ang Mo Kio, and Toa Payoh in the north to the southern part of Singapore. The town of Toa Payoh comes into view when high-rise apartments and offices along the expressway give way to low-rise and long-gabled sheds. A hallmark of Toa Payoh Industrial Estate. These industries, which range from woodworking to automotive and precision engineering, occupy the eastern fringe of the town, providing a reliable supply of jobs to residents. A distinctive characteristic of social housing blocks constructed in Singapore during her first 30 years of independence is a common corridor. A long passageway with one face open to the sky and another lined by households with open windows and doors. These corridors are often a microcosm of Singapore society, as each homeowner makes use of the front space for personal needs while still allowing free right-of-way to his neighbours. Commonly found along corridors are potted plants, which may be cooking herbs, bicycles, laundry, prayer tablets, and festively, the occasional Christmas and Ramadan light, Chinese New Year greetings, and the Deepavali Rangoli. A legacy of Toa Payoh before the arrival of social housing are the religious institutions established by the rural communities before resettlement. The Siu Tek Shon Thong, literally the Temple of Refined Good Virtues, was established in 1942. Rebuilt several times for expansion, it houses a free medical clinic and kidney dialysis unit for the community. While the status of religious institutions are secure, those of social houses are not so clear. While most of the homes are owned and bought with funds from a citizen's retirement savings account, ownership of the homes does not continue in perpetuity. The scarcity of land has made land use policies such that land leases are granted on 99-year terms. Many of these houses, which households have devoted a large part of their retirement savings towards, will reach a point of lease expiry, whence the value of the house will become zero. It will be approximately 40 years more before that event arrives, and it remains to be seen what solution may be in store. The business of the town begins to increase as we approach the town centre, which is also the public transportation hub. For a population of 5.6 million, the number of cars in Singapore is small at 650,000. majority of Singaporeans choose to use public transport in the form of bus and MRT due to the prohibitive cost of car ownership and the relative affordability and efficiency of alternatives. This explains why the town centre, with its transfer hub between bus and MRT, is often the busiest and most vibrant part of a satellite town. Toa Payoh Town Centre is anchored by a massive high-rise glass building that is the headquarters of the Housing and Development Board. This is where a social housing applicant collects keys to his flat, lodges a resale transaction, or selects the flat to purchase from the government. This activity is one of the must-dos for newlyweds or about-to-be-wed couples because a family nucleus is a necessary requirement for housing eligibility. That said, single Singaporeans without parents remain disenfranchised until the age of 35. HDB Hub is home to some of Singapore's firsts. The ground level contains Singapore's first air-conditioned bus interchange, which is connected seamlessly under shelter to Singapore's first metro station. From here, one may reach Raffles Place in less than 20 minutes. It's convenient that the town centre is also where many retailers and shops may be found, eliminating the need to travel downtown for but the most uncommon demands. An ubiquitous but extremely uncommon aspect of living in the heartlands of new towns are kopitiams or coffee shops. These privately owned eating places offer a variety of eating options from individual hawkers who pay rent for the space. The owner is usually the drink store operator, which also will hold a liquor license. Some will even offer football match screening in the evenings, making kopitiams the local equivalent of a pub. The atmosphere is noisy and casual, with conversations that echo the purest of sentiment on the ground. Finally, a single ficus or banyan tree stands out in a part of the mall. One of 6 sacred trees that predate the new town. Stories tell of supernatural events preventing its destruction, leading the Housing and Development Board to design the town centre around it. The shrine that sits under the tree contains a statue of the Goddess of Mercy. A more sanitized tale of Singapore's public housing story may be found at the HDB Gallery at HDB Hub, where there is a scale model of Toa Payoh Town and recent innovations in sustainable design, specifically its implementation in Tengah New Town. The gallery was briefly covered in a previous video. In this short trip, the neighbourhoods of Singapore in urban, historical, and modern settings were presented. While the settings and location differ, common amongst all is the practical spirit of Singaporeans, setting aside differences in religion and race to coexist and thrive, even borrowing traditions and styles from each other's faiths and cultures. In so doing emerges a uniquely Singaporean character, so much so that a Singaporean is immediately recognizable to another in a foreign land, regardless of race, language, or religion.